Ooh, what's going on, GBA fans? You got Matty Brolick here, and if you're wondering what that ridiculous noise that I just made was, that's actually my normal channel intro, and it's sort of a force of habit, so sorry for letting that one slip out. And if you're also wondering why Nick did not start off this video, Mighty Mamoswine, he could not be here, unfortunately. We both actually recorded the video together, but we had some trouble sending audio files to one another. So because of that, now we'd have to redo it again, and he is not available at the moment, so I'm just going to have to do this one solo. And since it's on short notice, I couldn't get a special guest like he had Hank the Pidgey last week. But anyway, welcome to the Week 9 Pick'em crew of Season 6 of the GBA. We will try to get this done as quickly and as efficiently as both Nick and I do without rambling too much, but at the same time still getting in most of which we need to say. So anyway, we'll go over Week 8 first really quickly, and as you can see, this was probably the most middling week of the entire season, where everyone had a fairly solid week. No weeks were below 3 and 5. 3 and 5 is not a good score, but it is certainly not terrible, as you know, a 3 and 5 week every now and then will not put you too far out of the race. But with that being said, it certainly is not great, and the crazy thing is no one got any higher than 5 and 3. So there were not any really good weeks to help those people pull away. So overall, definitely a middling week. I don't think we've had a week where people have been this close in the whole week's entirety. So that's kind of interesting, but it's sort of expected because some people are particularly hot, so picking them makes a good amount of sense and usually ends up working out. But then there are those games where it's just like it could really go either way, and that's what's causing people to go, 4 and 4, 3 and 5, 5 and 3. So hopefully this week will be a little bit easier to call, but I really don't think it necessarily is. So we'll just get right into it and see what happens. So also, by the way, the fans, you guys are doing a great job. The fact that you guys are 33-1 and you're ahead of a pretty good portion of our analysts is awesome. So keep coming out and keep voting in the polls, because that makes our job a lot more enjoyable, and it's just cool to see you guys do so well. So anyway, enough rambling. Week 9, we start off here with the San Diego Chargers versus the Boston Red Sox. Now, it's really too hard to pick against Envy at this point of the season. Right now, he's shown to be probably the most dominant coach in the league. His prep, ever since he lost to the Don fan, in my opinion, has only improved, because back then he came up, he still does, and he did initially. He came up with great ideas to counter team his opponent. Like, some of his sets were just really well thought out and unique, ones that are really hard to expect. So with that being said, it was easy for Envy to catch his opponents off guard, even if his play style was kind of similar week in and week out. But once he lost to the Don fan and kind of got a little bit more predictable, he really showed that he could up the level of innovation while also just being a more polished preparer, if that makes any sense. It almost seemed like earlier on he was just kind of throwing a whole mishmash of really, really useful sets against his opponents, ones that could just come out of nowhere and sweep his entire team, whereas now he has a little bit more of a thorough game plan going into each week, ones that are a little bit more foolproof and still have some of those great win condition sets. So with that being said, it's really hard to vote against Envy, even though last time he played Nick, it was a really close game that had a few things gone differently, could have went a different way. So it's just too hard to pick against Envy, but this is the type of game that I wouldn't be so shocked to see Nick win, because he just has some really good Pokemon against Envy, like Huron Black kills everything, while Mega Venusaur walls a really good portion of Envy's squad, and things like Alakazam are just really big threats with the ridiculous speed and just power that it has against Envy's team with its great coverage and high special attack. So I think Nick actually has a matchup advantage on paper, but like I said, it's too hard to pick against Envy at this point in the season. And he's also a very good friend of mine, so I'm going to have to stick with Envy. So going on to game number 2, we have the New York Metapods versus the Bo Russia Don fan. Now, this is one of the hardest games to call for me, because Dan, he's been busy with some in real life stuff. It's whatever you have to do in real life takes precedence over Pokemon. As seriously as we like to take the GBA and whatever other leagues we play in, it's important to note that real life comes before Pokemon 100% of the time. And as long as it's important real life stuff, but real life priorities definitely come before Pokemon, and that's something that you have to take into account if you are a New York Metapod or A-Drive fan, because he's busy. He's got a lot of things going on, and they're great things going on. But at the same time, he's still working really hard to make sure he keeps up with all of his uploads and his league battles, because this isn't the only league that he's a part of. So he's really doing his best, and I give him credit for that. But because he does have a lot of those restrictions, I do have to go with the Borussia Dortmund, because if they win this game, they are seriously in the playoff hunt. And Lars has a great team. I think his offensive threats really pressure A-Drive more than A-Drive pressures Lars, because Lars' team is really fast and can revenge a lot of the powerful monsters that A-Drive has on his team. So with that being said, I definitely think the Borussia Dortmund have a little bit of an advantage here. But Dan is the coach of the GBA, the number one coach of the GBA that I would say you can never count out of a match, because he can surprise anybody week in and week out. So with that being said, I certainly would not be too surprised to see Dan pull away with a victory here. So moving on, we have the Tampa Bay Lux Rays versus the New Orleans Pelipers, and the Lux Rays actually suffered a somewhat of an unexpected and tough loss to the Newcastle United. Looks like Newcastle is finally picking it up, which I'm happy to see, because I knew they could do it, but I feel like it's kind of late in the season, but better late than never, of course. So that's definitely something else. But Tampa Bay really, is probably going to want this win, because they still need to play the Chim Chargers, and they still need to play George throughout the rest of the season. So another loss here would really hurt their playoff chances. And I definitely think Mono and the Lux Rays are a really deserving playoff contender. So I think that Mono's really going to want this game. But so is John, too, just because if John can win out the rest of his games, he does have a pretty good playoff shot as well. But it's not quite as likely as Monotui. So with that being said, not to say that John wouldn't be as motivated, but it's just like the Lux Rays really need this. They really need this. So you could bet that Monotui is going to put everything into this game. And both of these coaches are the types that make really solid plays all the time. Their preparation is always solid, but I just think Monotui's is one step ahead of John's pretty consistently. And I like consistency. Mono's been consistent this entire season that I've seen him play so far. So I'm going to have to go with him over John, even though this one could definitely go either way. John is a fantastic coach with a really solid team. So who knows what's going to happen, but I'd like to place my money with Monotui on this one. So moving on, we have the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Utah Jasmine. Now, this one is pretty tough to call as well, but I'm going to have to go with Cooper here, because even though Cooper is not the most consistent guy by a long shot, neither is Battler X. I mean, Battler X always shows these signs of great plays, but then will find a way to do something kind of silly and hurt his chances. And I just think that his draft really is just not the best this season. I think the past two seasons, the Bucks had far better teams than they do this season. I think their playing and preparation has improved, but this year their draft is really lacking. So I think that if Battler X could continue to improve his battling skill and preparation skill, then when he does hit the jackpot with a good draft like he did the past two seasons, I really think he can make a serious dent in the league. But until all that stuff comes together, I don't really see him winning too many games. And Cooper, like I said, is not very consistent, but he's better at winning than Battler X is, put it that way. So I see Cooper winning this game, but I would not be too surprised to see the Bucks win it either, due to Cooper's inconsistency and just due to Battler X playing a little bit better as of late and prepping better. So moving on to the next one, we have the Newcastle United versus Real Madrid. Now, Newcastle has a really good team in my opinion. I think that if Fufu continues to prep and play well, he could beat pretty much anybody, but Miguel seems to finally have his head on straight a little bit more. It seems like a lot of pressure has been taken off his shoulders just because he's busy with other things. He's not really into Pokemon too much right now, but I still think he was letting, I don't know what it was, maybe some pride, maybe stress get to him, because he's so used to having so much success in Pokemon, especially in the GBA, and then to see himself come out and really, have to worry about even making the playoffs this season must have been a little bit of a shell shock to him. But as of recent, it seems like, whether he's going to quit after the season or not, I think that some pressure has been released off of his shoulders, and he's finally back to somewhat of the old Miguel that we saw in Season 4 and part of Season 5. So I think that he is going to win against the Newcastle United. He beat them last time, but in a really close game. And I think overall, if he really is putting all of his, a good amount of effort into this, Miguel is ridiculously talented, and he could definitely go really far this season. I just don't love his team. I like a lot of the Pokemon he has on his team. I just don't really love the way it meshes together. I think he's had better, and I don't think this team build, this more offensive team build, fits Miguel as well as his more balanced teams and styles normally do. I could be wrong, but I mean, I guess his record somewhat shows for that this season. So anyway, moving on from that game, we have the San Francisco Giants versus the Pittsburgh Piratas. Now, Tup, every time he hears my voice, must be thinking, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Because I keep saying how he's improving all the time, and I'm really impressed with how he's playing, but I always seem to pick against him. This game is one that I want to pick the other way pretty much, because I'm tempted to pick the other way right now, because I recently found out that Gio, lost both Manaphy and Chestnut. I knew he lost Chestnut, but I didn't know he lost Manaphy. He traded Manaphy for Latios, and Manaphy is a fantastic Pokemon in the format. It is really, really good at counter-teaming your opponent offensively, but it also matches up incredibly well versus Tup's team, and Chestnut does as well. So the fact that he lost both of these Pokemon definitely makes me wonder whether he can actually win this game against Tup, who's right now playing better than Gio in my opinion. So I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen this time around, but overall, I do, just going off of last game, seeing how well Gio played against Tup and seeing that huge deficit, I believe it was a 5-0 victory or something like that, and seeing many games of Tup and Gio in the past, I don't think Tup has ever, I don't think Gio has ever lost to Tup. So it seems like he has Tup's number somewhat, and that is why I'm going to pick him here, because I'm not too sure on Gio's playoff possibilities here. I know that he lost last week due to timer, which is kind of unfortunate because who knows what would have happened if the timer did not run out. But he, if he wants any chance at the playoffs, he really needs this win more than Tup does right now. I believe Tup right now is, what is he? Is he 6-2 or is he 5-3? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure Gio's 3-5 right now. So if he really wants a shot, he needs to win this game. And seeing how he usually plays well against Tup and has a pretty good team matchup, I think that Gio is more likely to win this game. But Tup could prove me wrong for like the 100th time this season for sure. So I do not want to count him out of this game. So moving on to game number 7, we have the San Francisco Arcaniners versus the San Jose Sharpedos. Now last week I accidentally picked against George. I thought that when it said the Atlanta Holuchas versus San Francisco, I thought it was Gio, and I just picked the Holuchas. But I don't like to pick against George because I think that he is the best preparer in the league. He's the best with preparation. Miguel at his prime is definitely really close, and MV is definitely, and Chimpact as well, are both giving him a run for their money, or run for his money. But overall, George he has a lot of experience in this format. The other two guys are more new, and although they have tons of battling skill, probably more than George does outside of the league format, in Smogon and whatnot, they definitely have more experience and skill there. I think George has way more experience in this type of format and does have a lot of Smogon and just natural battling skill. So with that being said, I really like to see how George prepares every week with his really offensive and fairly frail team, because those are the type of teams that I like to use. I think that he has maybe a little bit less of an offensive backbone than I would personally prefer. Defensive backbone that I would personally prefer, just because in this type of format you don't want to be too one-dimensional, but he prepares with it so well week in and week out, and to do that with a team that's frail and susceptible to hacks, susceptible to mispredictions, is really impressive in my opinion, and I do not like picking against him. So that's why I accidentally picked against him last week, and I'm not going to make that same mistake this week, because although Tom is playing well, he picked up a really big win last week and has some really big threats to George's team. For example, Mega Aerodactyl outspeeds George's entire team and has coverage for all of it. So that is a huge threat. But, Tom has not had the most impressive season so far, and George is one of, if not the hottest coach right now. So it's hard for me to pick against George, and I put him as the lock of my week just because, I don't know. I really do think that George is going to come out with the win in this one. I could definitely be wrong because Tom, like I said, is playing well. But I'm not totally sold on his team at this point because at first I said it could be really interesting, depending on how he could use it. But he hasn't really shown me that he's really, really comfortable with the Pokemon on his team and really knows how to use them to the fullest of their potential. So that is why I'm not too sold on Tom really getting a win over George this week. So moving on to the final game, we have the Philadelphia Scizors versus the Atlanta Holuchas rematch. Now, this one is, in my opinion, the toughest one to call of the week because Fizz has a fantastic matchup against Chimpact. And Volcanion literally just clicks buttons and watches things on Chimpact's team just drop or get severely hurt, and all around has a pretty solid matchup. Really good ways to pressure Chimp, and has a pretty solid defensive backbone all around to take a lot of things that Chimp would potentially want to throw at him on the offensive side. So with all that being considered, it's kind of tough to pick against Fizz this week because last time he played Chimp, he won with a pretty impressive 4-0, and maybe Chimp didn't prep the best, but whatever it was, he really did not look too solid that game. There wasn't much he could do. Fizz played well, prepped well, and his matchup really just carried him to a pretty easy victory. So with that being said, it's kind of tough to pick Chimpact this week, but Chimp did make some changes to his team. It seems like he's really getting the hang of this format because he's playing really well. He's outplaying pretty much all of his opponents, and he seems like he's getting the hang of prepping a little bit more than he did earlier on. So with all that being considered, I think that Chimp can win this game, and he's a good friend of mine. Like I always say, I know what he's capable of, and I think I'm going to have to let friendship prevail in this one and pick Chimpact over Fizz. But like I said, this one is the hardest one in my opinion to call of the week, and if Fizz won, I would not be surprised in the slightest because he always surprised me every time I pick Fizz. Like last week I picked him accidentally, but even so, picking Fizz, you usually have a pretty safe bet, but nope, he lost, and every time I pick against him, he wins. So I'm probably going to get this one wrong, but anyway, Chimpact is my good friend, and I don't want to pick against him, and I know that he has the potential to beat Fizz even with a terrible matchup, so we'll see what happens, but should definitely be an interesting week, guys. I'm not expecting to do too well this week. I don't know why. I just have a feeling I'm not going to go much higher than 4-4 and could even do worse. So hopefully not, but you never know. You really don't know with the GBA this year, guys. So that will wrap up this week's Pick'em Crew. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Next week, Nick will be back, so things will be back to normal. I know these past few weeks they have not been, but next week you can look forward to everything resuming back to normal. And yeah, we're looking forward to taking it from there. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for all the support with the likes and the comments, and especially voting in all the polls. Like I said, that makes our job so much more fun to see you guys engaged, and it's really been a great experience so far. So definitely continue with that because it means a lot to us. We're having a lot of fun. Looks like you guys are having fun, and we will enjoy the rest of the season together. So looking forward to next week, and I will see you guys later.